Alright guys, Quantum here with another quick Dark Souls 3 video. This time we're going to be mixing things up and actually looking at what I think is a decent Hexer Rushdown at soul level 120. Now these builds are not really the greatest at a lower level, just like in Dark Souls 2. In order to use Hexes, it requires a heavy stat investment into both Faith and Intelligence, and as a result you don't have much stats to allocate elsewhere. Here we're going to start off with the actual build breakdown. We actually went up to 39 health just so we can keep the 1801 standard baseline health that we're used to with the Ring of Favor +2 and the Life Ring +3 in Ember form. Our attunement we put up to 18 to have the 3 slots. That way we can use, in my opinion, the 3 best Rushdown Hex spells, which are Black Serpent, which got buffed in Regulation 1.09, and I'll be discussing that in just a little bit. Black Flame, which is very, very good, and then which is the regular Pyromancy. I think that one, I forget what it's called, Fire Surge or something? Yeah, Fire Surge, which is amazing for finishing off opponents and just getting in quick chip damage here and there. Now, aside from that, our Endurance, you could probably go a little bit lower if you were going to play a little bit more reactive to around 30 Endurance. You probably wouldn't suffer all that much. But again, since we're playing a little bit more of a Rushdown character, we're going to have a little bit more endurance, so I opted for 35 here. Our Vitality is at the base of 8, which is what you start off with as the Pyromancer, because that's the class we started off with. Our Strength only at 14, and this is, something that you're going to suffer with the build in general. This is the route that I personally decided to take with low strength and low dexterity. Strength at 14 just so we can one-hand some basic weapons. Maybe use the Crush Shields only require 14 strength. One-hand the Partisan if we need to. And dexterity only up to 18 so we can use things like the regular Katana, the Goddard Twin Swords, and other basic small or fast weapons. Our Intelligence and our Faith are each at 35. And, I know that sometimes people say, you shouldn't go above level 120, or if you do go above level 120, you should go up to the next cap, as they say, which is 150, which this character would definitely be more suited for. But when it comes to Hex spells, I believe the soft cap for most, catalysts and stuff that you're going to use to cast them with, like the Pyromancy Flame, Cathia's Chime, I think is the other one, and I forget what the staff is. I have it on me. Izalith staff. They cap off at around 40 each, so 40 intelligence and 40 faith. So you can actually get a little bit more damage out of your spells if you wanted to increase the cap. And yes, you could technically have less health or less endurance and put those points into intelligence and faith. Me personally, edging out the extra little bit of damage, to me it wasn't really that much worth it. I'd rather have the extra health just because that's what I'm used to playing with. And as a result, I can survive a little bit more. And you're going to definitely have to play a lot smarter with this kind of build and pick your moments. But with the combination of spells and weapons, you can really force a lot of tricks and deploy a lot of different tactics to mix up your playstyle and throw off your opponent. Now, you do have to be careful, and you don't want to be overly aggressive. But it is something, or this is a class that I believe that you can be at least somewhat aggressive and rush in with stuff like Black Flame, bait your opponent out with things like Black Serpent, and enemies who think they can contest the Black Serpent usually get caught out for it for around 200 points of damage, which is a nice quick chip. And then if they end up rushing you down, you can switch to the Black Flame and then just quickly cast that out and hit them for an extra bit of damage. And if you watch the montage that I uploaded before this build, that montage was a little bit different than this build, or the class that I was using with that was a little bit different. But we did a lot of baiting with the Black Serpent, and if we can combo the Black Serpent into the Black Flame, we'd end up doing somewhere like 500 points of damage or more, so it can be quite significant. Now, with that said, the ring setup is extremely important for this class. Now, I know that I use the Life Ring here, and again, you can opt not to use it. You are a little bit more of a glass cannon when you don't have a lot of health, but instead of the Life Ring, you would want to switch out to the Witch's Ring, which increases your Pyromancy. Since all of these spells that I'm using are Pyromancy classed, even though they're dark. If you guys don't know, in this game, there's no dedicated Hex category. The Hexes are actually split up into Sorceries, Miracles, and Pyromancy. So the Black Serpent, the Black Flame, and the Fire Surge are all classed as Pyromancy, so they all benefit from the 20%, I believe it is, boost from the Witch's Ring. So after I get hit once, I'll usually end up just going down one and switching out my Life Ring to the Witch's Ring and get that boost on my Pyromancies. You could always switch to the Sun Princess Ring, which is the classic strategy that we use with the quality build, but I opted not to do that. I said, nah, since we're going to be changing things up, we got to at least deploy some new tactics, right? So this actually works out quite well because you do dish out an extra 20% of damage, which can be quite significant. Now, I've personally opted to always have the Sage's Ring equipped because I want you guys to take a look at the casting speed for the Black Flame with and without the Sage's Ring. And I'll try to maybe slow down the clip so you guys can see how long it takes, but check this out. Comes out pretty fast with that. And if we take off the Sage's Ring, there's a lot more startup as a result. Okay, so again, with the Sage's Ring, and I'll maybe try to do a side-to-side comparison in my video editing, just so you guys can see it. It may not seem like a lot, but there is a little bit more of a delay, and that could mean the difference when an enemy's swinging a straight sword at you as you approach them or they approach you. So it is quite significant. I personally opted for this ring. Now, of course, other things you can use do include like the Faith Ring, the Priestess Ring, or the Intelligence Ring, which I believe is called the Scholar's Ring, to boost your intelligence and your faith up by 5. But again, I prefer the speed. I've talked about this in my other spellcaster builds. The speed of your spells matters more than the actual damage, because there are ways that you're going to chip away your opponent, condition your opponent, trick your opponent, bait your opponent, all that stuff. The whole PvP chess game, as I like to call it, or the mindset of psychologically conditioning your opponent, making them scared, making them understand that they can't come in and contest you because you have really fast spells, right? Look how fast that comes out with the Sage's Ring. If you take off the Sage's Ring, it has a lot more startup, as you guys can see there. So I just wanted to point that out, and that is the reason why I do use that ring. Now, when it comes to the actual weapons that you're using, I did try something new and go for the Dark Infusion, which I know a lot of you will say, why did you do that? That's useless, you're split damage, etc., etc. Yes, that's true, and yes, it doesn't nearly do as much damage as you would if you just kept it, sharp or heavy or refined or even raw. However, we don't really get that much damage anyways. I mean, it's still better to leave it as default rather than infuse it with raw. And I mean, this way at least I don't have to carry around the dark weapon to buff my swords, which only lasts for a small amount of time, because if you're going to play with this build, like I said, you're going to be chipping away opponents, so it's going to be a little bit more of a drawn-out match, but you're going to be having opportunities to go in and be aggressive with spells, with the smaller weapons, because these weapons do lend themselves to being aggressive, right? And yes, they are top-tier weapons, but they do very low damage when you infuse them with dark. So you're going to have to pick your moments, and you're going to have to play a little bit more tactically. It is very fun, but it can be frustrating, but you can definitely really frustrate your opponents, and I know that seems like a really douchebaggy thing to do, but I mean, if you guys have seen some of the PvP matches, even though they sometimes end up being a minute long or longer, if you're good at rolling, if you're good at reading your opponents will never really hit you. They'll be overly aggressive, and you can pick your moments to be aggressive on them as well. And the reason I call this a Hexer Rushdown is because you're not really relying on staying far away with a staff or something and casting spells. While that is an option with this class, you can equip things like the Deep Soul Arrow and Affinity and stuff like that and cast it. I prefer this method. It lends itself better to the overall approach of a Hexer at Soul Level 120, which is using the fast weapons going in. Because if you're constantly staying away from somebody trying to cast spells, if they approach you, you might have to whip out the R1. But if they're coming out with their attack as they approach you, if you're recovering from a spell or something, your attack wouldn't come out fast enough, or the enemy's attack might have hyper armor if they're using a medium weapon like a greatsword or even an ultra greatsword, or something like a spear or a glaive or something, and their attacks will still combo you for 2 hits, and that is something you want to avoid. So I just thought I'd point that out. Overall, this build, it is, not the most consistent, and you will definitely lose a few, especially if enemies are parry happy. You're going to really have to slow down the match, because since you are using smaller weapons that can be parried, it can be a little bit of a struggle. I mean, we do have some unique weapons at our disposal, like the Immolation Tinder, like the Witch Locks. This one can't be parried, obviously, being a whip. And of course, you also have the ability to parry if you want to as well, and deal some heavy damage. But I would say overall, we win about 70-75% of our matches. So every 10 matches we play, we might lose 1. It's not that bad. And when it comes to the armor, I know that I do opt for the heavier armor here, but I mean, you could also go for the under 30% look. since you aren't really using heavy weapons at all. And that can really benefit you. You gain the extra invincibility frame. You can stay very agile. But again, you would have to... I guess you can't really even do that. You'd have to equip probably even lighter armor than this. Maybe the Master's Gloves, maybe the Master's Robe, and maybe the Loincloth or something. So you'd really have to forego a lot of defense, but you could gain that, further roll and be completely agile if you wanted to play that playstyle as well. So that is the video. That is my build. I will be uploading a second PvP dueling video and some invasions with the Hex character that I already have recorded, and I will be commentating over that, giving you my take on some of those matches. But let me know what you guys think, any suggestions for improvements or anything like that. Yeah, that is the build. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Again, I would appreciate it if you could drop a like on it if you did enjoy the video. It really does help. Check out the channel for more Dark Souls content, and if you do like what I post, feel free to subscribe so you can stay up to date and catch me when I live stream, which is going to be a lot more in the future, I hope, as work starts to slow down. But anyways, guys, that is it for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. Quantum is out.